Dirty Dancing became one of the defining romantic films of the 1980s, but much of its enduring appeal comes from a cast whose performances feel remarkably natural. Released in 1987, the film transformed Patrick Swayze into an international star, gave Jennifer Grey the role that would permanently define her screen career, and surrounded them with experienced actors who made the world of Kellerman's resort feel authentic. The chemistry between the performers was particularly important because the story depends as much on relationships and social tension as it does on dancing. Jennifer Grey stars as Frances Baby Houseman, the intelligent and idealistic young woman at the center of the story. Grey was already familiar to movie audiences before Dirty Dancing. She had appeared in Red Dawn in 1984, where she worked alongside Patrick Swayze, and she gained further attention as Jeannie Bueller in the hugely popular Ferris Bueller's Day Off in 1986. That supporting role demonstrated a talent for comedy, but Dirty Dancing gave her the opportunity to carry an entire film. Grey was in her mid-20s when she played the teenage baby, yet she convincingly captured the character's mixture of innocence, curiosity, insecurity, and determination. Her performance works because Baby does not suddenly transform into a completely different person. Her confidence develops gradually. At first, she watches Johnny's world from the outside, fascinated by the freedom of the dancers. As she learns to dance, falls in love, and begins questioning her father's assumptions, Grey allows that emotional development to appear naturally. The role made Jennifer Grey internationally recognizable, but the enormous success of Dirty Dancing created an unusual problem. Baby became so closely associated with her that escaping the character's shadow proved difficult. Grey continued acting in film and television, but no later movie role achieved the same cultural impact. Decades later, her connection with dancing returned in a fitting way when she competed on and won Dancing with the Stars in 2010. Dirty Dancing therefore remained the central landmark of her career rather than simply an early success. Patrick Swayze's performance as Johnny Castle was equally important. Before Dirty Dancing, Swayze had already established himself as a promising actor through films including The Outsiders, Red Dawn, and Youngblood. What separated him from many other leading men was his extensive dance background. He had trained seriously as a dancer before becoming widely known as an actor, giving him exactly the combination that Johnny Castle required. Swayze brought physical confidence to Johnny without making the character seem effortless. Johnny is charismatic on the dance floor, but socially he understands that he occupies a vulnerable position. He works for wealthy guests who can enjoy his company while still looking down on him. Swayze communicates that frustration through Johnny's posture, expressions, and occasional anger. His dancing gives the character authority, while his quieter scenes reveal insecurity underneath the confidence. Casting Swayze also allowed the film to avoid separating acting from dancing. The audience could believe Johnny was genuinely an experienced professional dancer because Swayze could perform much of what the role demanded. His partnership with Grey created the movie's central chemistry. Interestingly, the two actors had previously worked together on Red Dawn and had experienced personal tension. Their relationship was not automatically harmonious, but their screen test demonstrated that they possessed powerful romantic and physical chemistry. Dirty Dancing changed Swayze's career dramatically. Johnny Castle turned him into a romantic leading man and international sex symbol. His performance earned him a Golden Globe nomination, and the success opened the door to major starring roles. He followed it with films such as Roadhouse and then Ghost, which became another enormous romantic success. Dirty Dancing also displayed another side of his talent through She's Like the Wind, a song performed by Swayze himself. Few actors could have combined acting, dancing, romantic charisma, and music so effectively in a single production. Jerry Orbach plays Dr. Jake Houseman, Baby's father. By 1987, Orbach was already an accomplished performer with an extensive theatrical career. He had achieved major success on Broadway and possessed the authority needed to make Jake more than a stereotypical strict father. Orbach gives him warmth and intelligence during the early scenes, making Baby's admiration for her father believable. This becomes important later when their relationship deteriorates. The conflict hurts precisely because the film has established genuine affection between them. Dirty Dancing became one of Orbach's best-known movie roles, although another defining chapter of his career was still ahead. He later became famous to television audiences as Detective Lenny Briscoe on Law & Order. His long-running performance on that series introduced him to another generation and made him one of television's most recognizable detectives. Cynthia Rhodes plays Penny Johnson, Johnny's professional dance partner. Rhodes was particularly well suited to the role because she was both an actress and an accomplished dancer. Before Dirty Dancing, she had appeared in major dance-oriented productions including Flashdance and Staying Alive. She had also appeared opposite Tom Selleck in Runaway. Her experience gives Penny immediate credibility. When she moves, there is never any doubt that this character has spent years dancing professionally. Penny also carries one of the film's most serious storylines. Her pregnancy and the dangerous circumstances surrounding her abortion move the movie beyond a simple summer romance. Rhodes gives the character dignity and vulnerability, helping the audience understand the economic insecurity experienced by the resort's working-class dancers. After several prominent roles during the 1980s, Rhodes largely withdrew from acting, making Dirty Dancing one of the performances for which she remains best remembered. When Dirty Dancing arrived in theaters in 1987, few could have predicted that a relatively modest romantic drama set at a summer resort would become one of the most recognizable films of its generation. Its cultural impact eventually extended far beyond its original box office success. The movie influenced popular music, dance, fashion, romantic storytelling, and the public images of Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. More importantly, it remained relevant because beneath its accessible love story were questions about class, gender, personal freedom, and reproductive rights that continued to generate discussion decades after its release. One of the film's greatest cultural achievements was making partner dancing exciting to a mainstream younger audience during an era dominated by contemporary pop music and music videos. Dirty Dancing presented dance as something intimate, rebellious, and emotionally expressive. Johnny and Baby do not simply perform routines together. Dancing becomes the language through which attraction develops, trust is established, and Baby discovers a confidence she did not possess at the beginning of the summer. The influence could be seen in dance schools, social events, television competitions, stage productions, and countless attempts to recreate the film's choreography. The final dance became especially iconic. Johnny lifting Baby above his head turned into an instantly recognizable image even among people who had never watched the entire movie. Couples have recreated the lift at weddings, parties, television programs, advertisements, and online videos. Sometimes it is performed seriously as a romantic tribute, while other versions deliberately turn it into comedy when participants discover how difficult the move actually is. The line "Nobody puts Baby in a corner" achieved an equally extraordinary life outside the film. Originally spoken by Johnny shortly before the climactic performance, it became shorthand for refusing to allow someone to be ignored, controlled, or underestimated. The phrase has been referenced, parodied, adapted, and quoted across television, comedy, advertising, journalism, and everyday conversation. Its endurance demonstrates how thoroughly Dirty Dancing entered the vocabulary of popular culture. The soundtrack was another major reason for the movie's influence. Dirty Dancing successfully combined songs associated with the early 1960s setting with recordings created for a 1980s audience. Instead of weakening the period atmosphere, this unusual combination helped the film connect two generations. Older viewers could respond to the nostalgia of the setting, while younger audiences received contemporary songs that sounded appropriate for a major romantic movie of their own era. The most important example was "I've Had the Time of My Life," performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. Used during the final dance, the song became inseparable from the movie and developed into an enduring celebration anthem. It won major awards, including the Academy Award for Best Original Song. Other recordings associated with the film also became hits, while Patrick Swayze's performance of "She's Like the Wind" strengthened the connection between the actor and the movie's musical identity. Dirty Dancing also contributed to renewed commercial interest in older recordings. Songs such as "Be My Baby" and "Do You Love Me" gained new exposure through the film and its enormously successful soundtrack. This mixture of nostalgia and contemporary music demonstrated how a soundtrack could become a major commercial product rather than simply background accompaniment. The album became one of the defining soundtrack successes of its period. The film's historical setting is equally important. The story takes place in 1963, a deliberate choice that positions the characters at the end of one cultural era and immediately before enormous social change in the United States. Baby belongs to a comfortable family that expects education, responsibility, and respectable achievement from her. Johnny belongs to a working-class environment where employment can disappear because of accusations or the preferences of wealthy guests. Their romance therefore crosses not only personal boundaries but social ones. Kellerman's resort functions almost like a miniature version of an older American social structure. Wealthy families arrive expecting organized entertainment and carefully controlled respectability. The young waiters selected from privileged backgrounds are encouraged to socialize with guests, while working-class dancers such as Johnny occupy a much less secure position. The contrast allows the film to question assumptions about respectability. Robbie appears educated and socially acceptable, but behaves selfishly, while Johnny is judged negatively despite repeatedly demonstrating loyalty. One of the film's most historically significant elements is Penny's unwanted pregnancy and abortion storyline. Because the story occurs before abortion became legal throughout the United States under the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, Penny is forced into an unsafe procedure performed by an unqualified practitioner. The consequences are frightening and nearly fatal. The film does not treat the situation as a distant political debate. Instead, it presents the practical dangers faced by a woman without money, power, or safe medical access. This storyline was unusually direct for a mainstream romantic film of the 1980s. It also gives Baby's involvement greater meaning. She obtains money from her father without explaining why, helps Penny, and eventually brings her physician father to treat Penny when complications develop. Baby's choices place her in conflict with the moral assumptions of the adults around her. The experience becomes part of a movement from protected adolescence toward a more complicated understanding of adulthood. Gender expectations are challenged elsewhere as well. Baby is initially awkward and inexperienced, while Johnny possesses physical confidence and sexual charisma. Yet Baby is not simply waiting to be rescued by him. She actively enters his world, helps his friends, confronts injustice, learns difficult choreography, challenges her father, and eventually takes responsibility for her decisions. The production of Dirty Dancing has become almost as fascinating as the film itself. What eventually became one of the most beloved romantic movies of the 1980s began as a relatively inexpensive project that did not appear destined to become a major phenomenon. The filmmakers worked with limited resources, a demanding dance schedule, changing weather conditions, and actors whose relationship could sometimes be tense. Yet many of those difficulties contributed to the unusual energy and authenticity that audiences ultimately saw on screen. The origins of the film were deeply personal for screenwriter Eleanor Bergstein. She had grown up visiting resorts in the Catskill Mountains with her family during the early 1960s. Her father was a doctor, and Bergstein herself had participated in dance competitions when she was young. Those memories provided the foundation for Frances Baby Houseman, her family, the resort environment, and the secret world of energetic dancing that exists behind the respectable activities organized for guests. Bergstein had previously written the screenplay for It's My Turn, released in 1980, which originally contained an erotic dance sequence. When that material was removed, she became increasingly interested in constructing an entire story around dancing. The concept eventually developed into Dirty Dancing. The screenplay combined romance with subjects that were surprisingly serious for what appeared on the surface to be a nostalgic summer movie, including class divisions, unwanted pregnancy, unsafe abortion, and the changing relationship between parents and children. Director Emile Audolino was particularly suited to the project because of his experience filming dance. Before Dirty Dancing, he had worked extensively with dance for television and documentaries, and he understood that choreography needed to be photographed in a way that allowed audiences to appreciate the performers' bodies and movements. Rather than hiding everything behind rapid editing, the film frequently gives Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey enough visual space for their dancing to become part of the storytelling. Casting Johnny Castle was crucial. Patrick Swayze possessed an unusual combination of acting experience, physical charisma, musical ability, and professional dance training. His mother, Patsy Swayze, was a dancer and choreographer, and Patrick had studied dance seriously before injuries helped redirect his career toward acting. This background meant the production had a leading man who could genuinely perform rather than merely imitate a dancer for the camera. Jennifer Grey and Swayze already knew each other from Red Dawn, and their previous working relationship had not been entirely comfortable. Grey reportedly had reservations about working with him again. However, their screen test revealed undeniable chemistry. Whatever personal friction existed between them could actually become useful. Baby and Johnny spend much of the movie challenging, irritating, attracting, and gradually trusting one another, and the unpredictable energy between Grey and Swayze helped those interactions feel convincing. One of the most famous behind-the-scenes examples appears during the rehearsal sequence in which Johnny repeatedly runs his hand down Baby's arm and Grey begins laughing. Johnny becomes increasingly frustrated as she struggles to remain serious. Those reactions were closely connected to the performers themselves. Grey was genuinely ticklish and prone to laughing, while Swayze could become frustrated when repeated takes interrupted the choreography. Ardolino recognized that the interaction felt authentic and incorporated the material into the finished sequence. Another memorable scene shows Baby and Johnny practicing alone while Johnny balances on a log and Baby attempts to copy him. The outdoor training sequences help make the relationship feel less polished than the final dance. Baby falls, struggles, laughs, and slowly improves. Grey was not presented as an instantly perfect dancer, which was essential to the character's credibility. Her progress had to look earned. The famous lake rehearsal created a different challenge. Baby and Johnny practiced the lift in the water, repeatedly attempting the movement while surrounded by the natural landscape. The scene appears romantic and playful, but filming was physically uncomfortable. The water was extremely cold, and the actors had to continue performing despite the temperature. The sequence became memorable partly because the environment looked so beautiful on screen, disguising the discomfort involved in creating it. Although the story takes place in the Catskill Mountains of New York, the movie was not primarily filmed there. Important location work took place at Mountain Lake Lodge in Virginia and Lake Lure in North Carolina. These locations provided the forests, cabins, lake areas, lawns, and resort architecture needed to create Kellerman's. Different real locations were combined through editing so effectively that they appear to belong to one continuous resort. Weather and seasonal changes caused additional problems. The production needed to create the appearance of summer even when conditions were beginning to change. Leaves could be altered or painted to maintain continuity, and performers sometimes had to act as though they were comfortably enjoying warm summer weather despite much colder temperatures. Because the story unfolds during a summer vacation, maintaining that illusion was essential. Dirty Dancing follows a seemingly simple summer romance, but its narrative is carefully constructed as both a coming-of-age story and a drama about social boundaries. Set during the summer of 1963, the film follows 17-year-old Frances Houseman, known as Baby, as she travels with her parents and oldest sister Lisa to Kellerman's, an upscale holiday resort in the Catskill Mountains. What begins as an ordinary family vacation gradually becomes the experience that changes Baby's understanding of love, adulthood, class, responsibility, and her own identity. The opening establishes Baby as intelligent, idealistic, and protected. She admires her father, Dr. Jake Houseman, and imagines a future devoted to helping others. At Kellerman's, however, she enters an environment built around carefully maintained social divisions. Wealthy guests enjoy organized entertainment, while employees are expected to follow strict rules. Some young male staff members from privileged backgrounds are encouraged to socialize with guests, while working-class entertainers such as Johnny Castle are treated very differently. The narrative changes direction when Baby carries watermelons to a staff party and discovers the employees dancing in a way completely unlike the polite entertainment presented to guests. Here she encounters Johnny, the resort's charismatic dance instructor, and Penny Johnson, his professional partner. The sequence functions as Baby's entrance into another world. She is fascinated, uncomfortable, and curious, and her attraction to Johnny begins before a conventional romance has even developed. The central conflict is introduced through Penny's pregnancy. Robbie Gould, a waiter who appears respectable because of his education and social position, is responsible but refuses to accept meaningful responsibility. Penny has arranged an abortion, but the procedure is scheduled for the same night that she and Johnny must perform at another resort. If Penny misses the engagement, they risk losing valuable income. Baby decides to help. First, she obtains money from her father without explaining why she needs it. Then a more difficult solution emerges. Baby can learn Penny's dance routine and perform with Johnny in her place. This decision gives the film its central narrative mechanism. Dance becomes more than entertainment. Every rehearsal advances Baby's emotional development while bringing her physically and psychologically closer to Johnny. The training section occupies a substantial portion of the middle of the film. At first, Baby struggles with timing, posture, confidence, and complicated movements. Johnny is impatient because his livelihood depends on the performance. Their rehearsals gradually become more relaxed, however, and their changing physical relationship reflects their emotional one. Touch that initially feels instructional becomes intimate. Frustration becomes humor, and awkwardness becomes trust. Their performance at the Sheldrake Hotel provides an important midpoint test. Baby manages much of the routine but cannot complete the lift. This is significant because the story deliberately postpones complete success. If Baby performed perfectly at this stage, there will be nowhere for the dance narrative to go. Instead, the sequence proves that she has improved while reminding the audience that her transformation remains unfinished. When Baby and Johnny return, the story suddenly becomes more serious. Penny has suffered dangerous complications following the abortion. Baby realizes that protecting the secret is less important than saving Penny, so she brings her father to help. Jake successfully treats Penny but misunderstands Johnny's involvement, assuming that Johnny caused the pregnancy. His attitude toward Johnny becomes openly hostile, and Baby finds herself caught between loyalty to the father she has always admired and knowledge that her father is judging the situation incorrectly. This conflict marks a major stage in Baby's maturation. Earlier, she could believe that her father's moral judgment was automatically correct. Now she possesses information he does not have. She knows Robbie is responsible for Penny's pregnancy and knows Johnny has actually tried to protect his friend. For the first time, Baby must decide whether respecting her father means obeying him or standing by what she believes is right. The romance between Baby and Johnny deepens after the crisis. Their relationship is important structurally because each sees something in the other that challenges their assumptions. Baby initially views Johnny as confident and free, but discovers that his position is economically insecure. Johnny initially sees Baby as another privileged resort guest, but learns that she is willing to risk her reputation to help people who have little power. A second major complication arrives through Vivian Pressman, an older married guest who has pursued Johnny. After Johnny rejects her advances, she retaliates by accusing him of stealing a wallet. The accusation threatens his job and reputation. Baby knows Johnny could not have committed the theft because she was secretly with him at the time. Defending him therefore requires her to reveal their relationship. Baby chooses the truth. She admits that she spent the night with Johnny, sacrificing the respectable image her family expects from her. Johnny is cleared of the theft, but the victory is incomplete. His relationship with a guest violates the resort's expectations, and he is dismissed. This creates the film's emotional low point. Baby has grown enough to defend him publicly, yet she cannot prevent the social system from punishing him. Johnny's departure also leads to one of Baby's most important confrontations with her father. She acknowledges that she lied to him but challenges his refusal to reconsider his judgment. The conflict is painful because Baby still loves and respects Jake. Her development does not require rejecting her family. Instead, she learns that becoming an adult sometimes means recognizing that people she admires can be mistaken. The climax occurs during the resort's end-of-season talent show. The evening initially appears destined to conclude without Johnny, leaving the romance unresolved. Then Johnny unexpectedly returns. He walks into the room, approaches the Houseman table, and refuses to allow Baby to remain hidden. His declaration that nobody puts Baby in a corner announces the final reversal. Dirty Dancing has a visual identity that is less flashy than many other major films of the 1980s. Yet this restraint is one of its greatest strengths. Director Emile Ardolino and cinematographer Jeffrey Jur approach the story with an emphasis on intimacy, movement, physical chemistry, and atmosphere. Rather than overwhelming the audience with elaborate visual techniques, the camera allows the characters and their bodies to communicate. The result is a film that feels romantic and nostalgic, while still preserving the energy and sensuality necessary for its dance sequences. The setting immediately establishes the visual world. Kellerman's resort is presented through green landscapes, wooden buildings, open lawns, dining rooms, cabins, recreational spaces, and the surrounding mountains. These locations create an idealized image of an American summer vacation in 1963. Families participate in organized games and social events, while employees carefully maintain the resort's cheerful atmosphere. On the surface, everything appears controlled, safe, and respectable. This environment is deliberately contrasted with the spaces occupied by Johnny, Penny, and the other dancers. When Baby discovers the staff party, she crosses from the organized world of the guests into a darker, hotter, more physically expressive environment. Bodies are positioned close together, movement is sensual, and the atmosphere feels almost forbidden compared with the polite activities taking place elsewhere. The visual difference establishes that Baby has crossed an invisible social boundary before she fully understands what that boundary means. The camera's treatment of dance is central to the movie's success. Ardolino had extensive experience filming dancers and understood that choreography loses much of its impact when the performers' bodies are constantly fragmented by editing. Dirty Dancing, therefore, frequently uses compositions that allow audiences to observe movement across a meaningful amount of space. Legs, arms, posture, rhythm, and interaction remain visible. At the same time, the film does not photograph dancing like a distant stage performance. Close-ups and medium shots are used when emotional intimacy becomes important. During Johnny and Baby's rehearsals, attention frequently shifts between their movements and their expressions. A hand placed on a waist can become as important as a complicated step. The camera understands that these lessons are simultaneously dance instruction and romantic development. This is particularly effective during the famous rehearsal sequence, in which Johnny teaches Baby how to maintain her frame and control her movements. Gray's laughter and Swayze's irritation make the scene feel spontaneous. Visually, the proximity of their bodies becomes part of the storytelling. Baby is learning how to dance, but she is also becoming comfortable with physical intimacy. The framing allows the audience to recognize both developments without requiring explanatory dialogue. The outdoor rehearsal montage expands the visual scale. Baby and Johnny practice on roads, in fields, near the water, and across the natural landscape. Moving the training outside the resort creates a sense of freedom. Away from Kellerman's social rules, the two characters can develop their relationship in spaces that feel less controlled. Nature becomes associated with experimentation and emotional openness. The log sequence is especially effective because balance becomes both a physical and visual motif. Johnny moves confidently, while Baby struggles to follow him. Their positions communicate their different levels of experience without words. The scene also gives the actors room to behave playfully, allowing the romance to emerge from shared movement rather than conventional declarations of affection. The lake sequence transforms the famous lift into a different kind of visual experience. Instead of attempting the movement on a stage, Baby practices in water. The wide natural setting makes the characters appear temporarily separated from the social world of the resort. Water also allows Baby to fall without the same physical consequences, visually representing a safer environment in which she can confront her fear. Lighting helps distinguish different emotional spaces. Daylight scenes around the resort often possess a bright, open quality appropriate to the public world of family activities. Evening dances and staff gatherings are darker and more intimate. Shadows, warm interiors, and concentrated pools of light create spaces where behavior becomes less formal. The visual movement from daylight into night frequently parallels Baby's movement from innocence toward experience. The color palette reinforces the period setting without making every frame look artificially historical. Clothing, interiors, vehicles, and resort decorations suggest the early 1960s, while the natural greens and browns of the locations provide visual continuity. Baby's appearance is comparatively understated, helping establish her as someone who initially feels less glamorous than the experienced dancers around her. Costume and cinematography work together particularly well in the dance sequences. Johnny's dark clothing frequently gives him a strong silhouette and emphasizes the lines of his body. Baby's lighter clothing creates contrast and contributes to her youthful appearance. During the final dance, their visual presentation becomes cleaner and more iconic, allowing the choreography to dominate the frame. The camera also repeatedly uses observation as a storytelling device. Early in the movie, Baby watches. She watches Johnny dance, watches the employees, watches Penny, and studies a world she has only recently discovered. Her position is frequently that of an outsider looking inward. As the story develops, she gradually moves from the edge of these compositions toward their center. This progression reaches its conclusion during the finale. At the beginning of the story, Baby is largely a spectator. During the final performance, the entire room becomes the spectator and Baby becomes the person being watched. This reversal is one of the film's most effective visual expressions of her character development. Music is so deeply connected to Dirty Dancing that it is almost impossible to imagine the film without its soundtrack. While many romantic dramas use songs to support important moments, Dirty Dancing builds much of its identity around music itself. Songs establish the period, define the difference between generations, create sexual tension, guide the dance sequences, and communicate emotions that the characters cannot always express directly. The soundtrack eventually became a cultural phenomenon in its own right and played a major role in keeping the movie popular long after its original release. The story takes place in 1963, allowing the filmmakers to use music associated with the period when Baby and her family visit Kellerman's. Early rock and roll, rhythm and blues, soul, and pop recordings create a sense of youthful energy beneath the resort's controlled atmosphere. This musical environment is essential because the film takes place at a moment when American popular culture was changing rapidly. One of the most recognizable songs is Be My Baby by the Ronettes. Its famous opening rhythm immediately establishes an emotional connection with the early 1960s. Rather than simply telling the audience when the story occurs, the film allows popular music to create the period atmosphere. For viewers who remembered the era, these recordings produced nostalgia. For younger audiences in 1987, they made the period feel energetic rather than distant. The staff party provides one of the clearest examples of music functioning as storytelling. When Baby enters the room carrying watermelons, she encounters a style of dancing far more sensual than anything occurring in the public areas of Kellerman's. Do You Love Me by the Contours drives the scene with an infectious rhythm. The music communicates that Baby has entered another world before she completely understands what she is seeing. The difference between public and private music is important. Kellerman's offers respectable entertainment designed for families, but behind the scenes, the staff dances with greater freedom. The soundtrack therefore contributes to the movie's exploration of social boundaries. Music becomes something capable of breaking through the control behavior expected by the resort. As Johnny begins teaching Baby, rhythm becomes part of their relationship. He needs her to stop intellectualizing every movement and begin feeling the beat. The dance lessons depend on repetition, counting, physical contact, and musical timing. The audience experiences Baby's improvement not through a long explanation, but by hearing and watching her become increasingly comfortable inside the music. Several classic recordings are used to give these sequences emotional personality. Songs such as Love Man by Otis Redding and Hey, Baby by Bruce Channel help transform training into flirtation. The soundtrack allows the film to move quickly through Baby's development while still making the growing attraction between her and Johnny understandable. Music essentially becomes a form of dialogue between them. One of the most intimate musical moments comes with Cry to Me, performed by Solomon Burke. The song accompanies a crucial stage in Baby and Johnny's relationship, and its soulful quality gives the scene emotional warmth and sensuality. The music does not merely announce romance. It creates a space in which the characters can stop arguing, teaching, or explaining themselves and communicate physically. Dirty Dancing also made the unusual decision to combine authentic older recordings with contemporary songs created or popularized in connection with the 1987 film. In theory, this could have damaged the historical illusion. Instead, it created a bridge between the era depicted in the story and the era in which audiences first experienced the movie. Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind is one of the strongest examples. Swayze had co-written the song before Dirty Dancing, and his own vocal performance gives it an unusual connection to Johnny Castle, even though it is not literally presented as Johnny singing. The recording expresses longing and emotional vulnerability, revealing a softer side that complements Swayze's physically confident screen presence. The soundtrack also includes Hungry Eyes, performed by Eric Carmen. The song became closely associated with the romantic development between Baby and Johnny. Its polished 1980s production differs from the period recordings, yet emotionally it fits the film's romantic fantasy. This mixture of musical eras became one of the soundtrack's defining characteristics. The most important song, however, is I've Had the Time of My Life, performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. The recording accompanies the climactic final dance and functions almost like the movie's emotional thesis. It begins relatively gently before building in intensity, allowing the choreography and dramatic resolution to grow alongside the music. By the time the song reaches its most powerful section, the audience has already watched Baby struggle with the choreography, fail to perform the lift, fall in love with Johnny, confront her father, and see Johnny dismissed. The final performance, therefore, carries the weight of everything that has happened before it. The music converts those separate conflicts into a single emotional release. The successful lift is inseparable from the musical build. Baby runs toward Johnny as the song approaches its climactic moment, and the combination of movement and sound creates one of the most recognizable images in romantic cinema. Without the musical timing, the lift would still be impressive. With the song, it becomes triumphant. I've Had the Time of My Life became a major success beyond the film. It won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, as well as other major honors, and became permanently associated with celebrations, romantic events, television performances, and attempts to recreate the famous final dance. The song and the movie effectively became advertisements for each other. Sound design outside the songs is more understated but equally useful. Footsteps, breathing, clothing movement, bodies hitting the floor, and environmental sounds help preserve the physical nature of the dancing. During rehearsals, the audience can sense effort. Dancing is not presented as completely weightless fantasy. The performers breathe heavily, lose balance, and physically interact with their surroundings. When Dirty Dancing was released in 1987, its eventual status as a cultural phenomenon was far from guaranteed. The film had been produced on a relatively modest budget, came from Vestron Pictures, a company better known for home video distribution, and did not possess the kind of expensive spectacle normally associated with a major blockbuster. Yet audiences responded with extraordinary enthusiasm. What initially appeared to be a small romantic dance film became a major box office success, produced an enormously popular soundtrack, and eventually developed into one of the most enduring romantic films of its era. The initial critical response was more divided than the audience reaction. Some reviewers recognized the film's energy, chemistry, music, and emotional effectiveness, while others regarded its story as predictable or overly sentimental. The central romance between Baby Houseman and Johnny Castle follows familiar dramatic territory. An inexperienced young woman from a comfortable family enters an unfamiliar world, falls for a man considered socially inappropriate, challenges her parents, and emerges more independent. For critics who focus primarily on that structure, Dirty Dancing could appear conventional. The movie contains recognizable coming-of-age and forbidden romance elements, and its climax offers the kind of emotionally satisfying resolution designed to send audiences out of the theater feeling uplifted. However, even critics who are less enthusiastic about the screenplay often acknowledge the effectiveness of the dancing and the appeal of the central performers. Jennifer Grey's performance became one of the film's major strengths. Baby was not presented as a glamorous romantic heroine from her first appearance. She was awkward, inexperienced, idealistic, and sometimes uncertain of herself. Grey's willingness to make the character look uncomfortable helped audiences believe in her development. Her laughter, nervous expressions, physical hesitation, and eventual confidence created a transformation that felt more human than a conventional makeover. Patrick Swayze attracted even greater attention. Johnny Castle gave him the opportunity to combine several abilities that had rarely been displayed together in his earlier films. He could act, dance, project physical strength, and function convincingly as a romantic leading man. His performance quickly became one of the defining elements of the movie, and Johnny's combination of toughness and vulnerability helped Swayze become an international star. The chemistry between Grey and Swayze was repeatedly central to audience enthusiasm. Their relationship contains tension from the beginning. Johnny is initially impatient with Baby, while she is fascinated by him but uncomfortable in his world. As their dance training progresses, physical instruction gradually becomes romantic intimacy. Audiences could watch the relationship develop through movement rather than depending entirely on dialogue. Commercially, Dirty Dancing dramatically exceeded expectations. Produced for only a few $1 million, it earned many times its budget and became a major international success. Its theatrical performance was especially impressive because the film did not depend on action spectacle, elaborate visual effects, or an established franchise. Word of mouth became enormously important as viewers returned to the film and recommended it to others. The soundtrack became another measure of its success. The music was not merely appreciated within the film. It became a commercial phenomenon independently. The soundtrack sold millions of copies and generated major hit singles. I've Had the Time of My Life, performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes, became the musical signature of the movie and received the Academy Award for Best Original Song. The song also won a Golden Globe and a Grammy, demonstrating how completely the musical element of Dirty Dancing crossed into mainstream popular culture. Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind became a successful single as well, further increasing his visibility beyond acting. Hungry Eyes, performed by Eric Carmen, also became strongly associated with the film's romantic atmosphere. Awards recognition for the movie itself was more limited than its popularity might suggest. Dirty Dancing was not treated as a major prestige production competing across numerous Academy Award categories. Its most important awards triumph came through its music. Swayze and Grey nevertheless received significant attention for their performances, including Golden Globe nominations, reinforcing how strongly the film depended on its leading couple. Not all discussion surrounding the movie was celebratory. Penny's abortion storyline attracted particular attention because it introduced a serious reproductive issue into what was marketed primarily as romantic entertainment. The story is set in 1963, before abortion became legal nationwide in the United States, and Penny suffers severe complications following an unsafe procedure. This material distinguished Dirty Dancing from many mainstream romances of its period. The film does not present Penny's situation as an abstract political argument. Instead, it shows how money, gender, and legal restrictions can place a vulnerable woman in physical danger. For some viewers, this gave the movie unexpected social depth. For others, the seriousness of the storyline seemed unusual beside the romance, dancing, and nostalgic entertainment. Class politics also became an important part of later critical reassessment. Johnny is repeatedly judged because of his background and occupation, while Robbie benefits from education and social respectability despite behaving irresponsibly. The resort's hierarchy allows wealthy guests greater freedom, while employees remain vulnerable to accusation and dismissal. These elements encouraged later critics to view the film as more socially observant than its reputation as a simple romantic fantasy suggested. The film's portrayal of sexuality has also inspired different interpretations. Some viewers see Baby's relationship with Johnny as an empowering story about a young woman discovering independence, desire, and confidence. Others have examined the age and experience difference between the characters more critically. Changing social attitudes have therefore produced new discussions around a romance that audiences in 1987 often accepted primarily as fantasy. The legacy of Dirty Dancing extends far beyond its original success in 1987. What began as a modestly budgeted romantic drama became a permanent part of popular culture, surviving through theatrical reissues, home video, television broadcasts, soundtrack sales, stage productions, anniversary celebrations, merchandise, and attempts to continue or recreate its story. More importantly, the film established a model for combining romance, music, dance, nostalgia, and coming-of-age storytelling that later productions would repeatedly revisit. One reason for this longevity is the simplicity of its central idea. Baby enters an unfamiliar world, meets Johnny, learns to dance, falls in love, challenges the expectations surrounding her, and emerges more confident. That structure is easy to understand, but Dirty Dancing gives it additional depth through class conflict, family relationships, sexuality, and Penny's pregnancy. Later dance romances frequently used similar combinations of physical training, social difference, romantic attraction, and performance as emotional climax. Films such as Save the Last Dance and Step Up belong to a later generation of dance cinema, and they tell very different stories, yet they demonstrate how durable this basic formula became. Dance is not merely decoration. Characters from different backgrounds are brought together through movement. Romantic chemistry develops during training, and a major performance becomes the place where personal conflicts are resolved. Dirty Dancing was not the first film to connect romance and dance, but its extraordinary popularity helped prove how commercially powerful that combination could be. Its influence can also be felt in the way dance training is photographed as romantic storytelling. Johnny correcting Baby's posture, positioning her arms, teaching her rhythm, and gradually learning to trust her created a vocabulary that later films and television programs repeatedly echoed. Physical instruction provides an immediate reason for two characters to enter one another's personal space, allowing attraction to develop visually. The final lift became perhaps the film's greatest visual legacy. Baby running toward Johnny before being raised above his head is recognizable independently of the plot. The pose has been recreated in television series, advertisements, comedy sketches, reality programs, wedding dances, talent competitions, music videos, and social media clips. Some recreations celebrate the romance sincerely, while others use the difficulty of the movement for comedy. The film's dialogue developed a similar afterlife. Nobody Puts Baby in a Corner became one of the most recognizable romantic movie lines of its era. Removed from its original context, it can mean refusing to allow someone to be ignored, underestimated, or controlled. The phrase has appeared in headlines, television dialogue, advertising, comedy, and everyday conversation. Even smaller moments became culturally durable. Baby's awkward declaration, "I carried a watermelon," became an affectionate symbol of social embarrassment. It captures the experience of meeting someone impressive and immediately saying something ridiculous. The fact that audiences remember such a small piece of dialogue demonstrates how thoroughly the film's personality entered popular memory. The soundtrack created another enormous legacy. I've Had the Time of My Life became inseparable from the final dance and continued to appear at celebrations, weddings, television competitions, and nostalgic events. Hungry Eyes and Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind retained strong associations with the film, while older recordings used in the story gained renewed exposure. This musical success demonstrated the commercial possibilities of combining period songs with newly recorded material. Dirty Dancing allowed nostalgia to function alongside contemporary pop without demanding strict musical authenticity. The soundtrack could evoke 1963 while simultaneously appealing to listeners in 1987. Its massive sales helped turn the music into an independent extension of the film. Home entertainment was especially important to the movie's long-term influence. Dirty Dancing arrived during an era when VHS was changing how audiences interacted with films. A theatrical movie no longer disappeared after leaving cinemas. Fans could own it, replay favorite sequences, learn choreography, memorize dialogue, and introduce the story to family members. Dirty Dancing became exceptionally suited to repeated viewing because its musical sequences could be enjoyed almost like individual performances. Attempts to expand the property began relatively early. In 1988, Dirty Dancing was adapted into a television series. Rather than simply continuing the exact movie with the original stars, the series reworked its central concept with different performers. It was short-lived, illustrating how difficult it was to reproduce the particular chemistry that had made the film successful. A theatrical follow-up arrived much later with Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights in 2004. Set in Cuba in the late 1950s, it told a new romantic dance story rather than directly continuing Baby and Johnny's relationship. Patrick Swayze appeared in a small role as a dance instructor, creating a deliberate connection with the original. The film never approached the cultural impact of its predecessor, but its existence demonstrated the continuing value of the Dirty Dancing name. The story also found major success on stage. Dirty Dancing, the classic story on stage, transformed the movie into a live theatrical experience, allowing audiences to see familiar scenes and dances recreated in person. Productions were mounted internationally, confirming that affection for the film was not limited to American audiences. A television remake appeared in 2017, introducing the story to another generation with a new cast. The production demonstrated both the strength and the difficulty of remaking Dirty Dancing. The basic plot remained recognizable, but comparisons with Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze were unavoidable. Their chemistry had become so central to the original's reputation that any recreation faced enormous expectations. The film has also generated a substantial merchandise and nostalgia industry. The extraordinary longevity of Dirty Dancing cannot be explained only by its dancing, soundtrack, or famous romance. The film endured because audiences developed a personal relationship with it. Different generations have discovered different meanings in Baby's Summer at Kellerman's, and those interpretations have changed as society itself has changed. Some viewers remember the movie primarily as a romantic fantasy. Others see a coming-of-age story, a portrait of class division, a film about female independence, or a nostalgic memory of a particular moment in American history. For audiences who encountered Dirty Dancing during its original 1987 release, the film offered nostalgia on several levels. The story takes place in 1963, meaning many adult viewers could remember the music, clothing, family resorts, dances, and social expectations represented on screen. Kellerman's evokes a form of vacation culture associated with an earlier period, when families could spend extended summer holidays participating in organized activities and evening entertainment. Yet the movie was not simply celebrating the past. The summer of 1963 sits immediately before enormous cultural changes in American society. Viewers familiar with what followed could recognize that Baby was living near the end of one era. Traditional family authority, class expectations, sexual morality, and popular culture were all about to face major challenges. This historical awareness gives the film a subtle sense that the characters are standing on the edge of change. Younger viewers in 1987 often responded differently. For them, Baby could represent the familiar experience of wanting adults to recognize that they were capable of making their own decisions. She begins the film protected by her family and particularly close to her father. Her journey becomes emotionally recognizable because independence does not arrive through a single act of rebellion. It develops through mistakes, secrets, responsibility, attraction, disappointment, and confrontation. Many viewers identify with Baby precisely because she is not introduced as exceptionally glamorous or socially confident. When she enters the staff party carrying watermelons, she is visibly uncomfortable. She does not know how to move or what to say. Her awkwardness makes her accessible. The audience is invited to discover Johnny's world with her rather than watching an already confident heroine enter it effortlessly. This contributed strongly to the romantic fantasy. Johnny Castle is experienced, physically confident, talented, and initially intimidating. Baby is inexperienced and uncertain. Yet Johnny eventually recognizes qualities in her that other people overlook. For many viewers, this creates the fantasy of being truly seen by someone who appears to belong to an exciting world beyond ordinary life. The romance also appealed because it crosses social boundaries. Baby comes from a financially comfortable family with expectations of education and achievement. Johnny survives through physical work and entertainment, knowing that wealthy guests and resort management possess power over his employment. Their attraction challenges the assumption that people should remain within predetermined social categories. Audience interpretations of Johnny have evolved over time. During the film's original popularity, Patrick Swayze's performance was widely embraced as the image of an ideal romantic rebel. Strong but sensitive, sexually confident but capable of vulnerability, and willing to return publicly for the woman he loves. For later viewers, the character can also be examined through questions of economic insecurity and power. Johnny may appear physically powerful, but within Kellerman's social system, he has relatively little authority. Baby has similarly been reassessed through changing ideas about female characters. Her story is romantic, but her development does not depend exclusively on winning Johnny's love. She helps Penny before a relationship with Johnny has fully developed. She challenges Robbie, lies to protect people she believes need help, accepts responsibility for those lies, and eventually confront her father. Her moral awakening is therefore as important as her sexual and romantic awakening. The relationship between Baby and her father often becomes more meaningful to viewers as they grow older. Younger audiences may primarily experience Jake as the parent standing between Baby and Johnny. Adult viewers can more easily understand his fear. He believes he is protecting his daughter and initially lacks crucial information about what happened to Penny. His mistake is not that he cares too much, but that he becomes too confident in his assumptions. This creates an unusual viewing experience in which sympathy can shift with age. A teenager may strongly identify with Baby's frustration at being judged. Years later, the same viewer may better understand Jake's anxiety while still recognizing that Baby is right to challenge him. Dirty Dancing allows both emotions to coexist, which helps explain why audiences can return to it at different stages of life. Penny's storyline has also become increasingly important in discussions of the film. Some viewers initially attracted by the romance discover on later viewings how serious her situation is. Her unwanted pregnancy and dangerous abortion introduce consequences that are dramatically different from the carefree image suggested by the resort vacation. Because the story is set in 1963, Penny cannot simply access safe legal medical treatment. Her economic position makes her especially vulnerable. Modern audiences often interpret this storyline through contemporary debates about reproductive rights and access to health care. As those debates have changed, the sequence has repeatedly acquired renewed relevance. The emotional power of Dirty Dancing depends heavily on character development. Although the film is remembered for romance, music, and dancing, the central characters are not exactly the same people at the end of the summer as they were when they arrived at Kellerman's. Baby Houseman experiences the most obvious transformation, but Johnny Castle, Jake Houseman, Penny Johnson, and several supporting characters also reveal different sides of themselves. Their individual journeys connect the romantic story to larger questions about maturity, dignity, trust, prejudice, and personal responsibility. Frances Baby Houseman begins the film as an intelligent but sheltered 17-year-old. She has strong ideals and wants to make a positive contribution to the world. She admires her father enormously and assumes that his moral judgment is reliable. Her family has given her security, education, and confidence in certain intellectual matters. But Baby has little experience with romantic relationships, economic hardship, or the complicated choices adults sometimes face. Her arrival at Kellerman's places her inside a comfortable environment that initially reinforces this protected existence. The important change occurs when she discovers the staff party. Carrying watermelons into the room, Baby becomes an observer of a world that is physically and socially unfamiliar. She is fascinated by Johnny, Penny, and the dancers, but she is also visibly awkward. This scene establishes the starting point of her transformation. She is watching other people live with a freedom she has never experienced. Penny's pregnancy forces Baby to move from observation to action. Rather than simply feeling sympathy, she obtains money from her father and becomes directly involved. When Penny needs someone to replace her at a dance engagement, Baby accepts a responsibility for which she is completely unprepared. Her decision to learn the routine becomes the mechanism through which both her physical and emotional development occurs. At first, Baby approaches dancing almost as though it were an academic problem. She concentrates on instructions and counts steps, while Johnny becomes frustrated with her lack of instinctive rhythm. Gradually, however, she learns to trust her body. This development parallels her broader transformation. Baby begins the story depending on rules provided by others and eventually learns to make decisions based on her own experience. Her relationship with Johnny accelerates this change. Baby initially idealizes him as a confident and exciting outsider, but she gradually discovers his vulnerability. Johnny has talent and charisma, yet his employment depends on people who often consider him socially inferior. Baby begins to recognize that confidence does not necessarily mean power. Her most important act of maturity occurs when Johnny is accused of theft. Baby can protect her own reputation by remaining silent, or she can reveal that she was with Johnny. She chooses to tell the truth, even though doing so exposes their relationship to her family. This moment completes an important stage in her development. Earlier, she lied to her father because she was frightened of explaining the situation. Now she willingly accepts personal consequences to defend another person. Johnny's character arc is quieter but equally important. At first, he appears completely self-assured. He controls the dance floor and knows exactly how to use his body. Baby sees him as someone who possesses the confidence she lacks. As the story develops, however, the audience discovers that Johnny's confidence is partly professional armor. Johnny understands the class system at Kellerman's extremely well. He knows wealthy guests can make accusations and that management is likely to believe them. He has learned to expect judgment from people such as Jake Houseman. This produces anger and defensiveness. When Baby enters his world, Johnny initially assumes she will behave like another privileged guest who does not understand the consequences faced by employees. Baby challenges those assumptions. She helps Penny without expecting anything in return, works seriously during rehearsals, and eventually risks her relationship with her family to defend Johnny. Her actions show him that he does not have to accept every judgment imposed upon him. By the final sequence, Johnny is willing to return publicly and refuse the humiliation of his dismissal. The relationship, therefore, changes both characters. Johnny teaches Baby physical confidence, but Baby gives Johnny another kind of confidence, the belief that he deserves to be defended and respected. Their romance becomes meaningful because neither transformation moves in only one direction. Dr. Jake Houseman undergoes another significant arc. At the beginning, he is Baby's moral hero. Their relationship is affectionate, and Jake clearly believes in his daughter's intelligence. The conflict begins when he treats Penny after the failed abortion and incorrectly assumes that Johnny caused her pregnancy. Jake's mistake is understandable because he lacks information, but his refusal to reconsider his assumptions creates the deeper problem. His judgment of Johnny is influenced by appearances and social expectations. Robbie seems like the respectable young man, while Johnny appears dangerous. The truth is almost exactly the opposite. Baby's confrontation with Jake becomes painful because she is not simply rebelling against an unreasonable parent. She is challenging someone she genuinely loves. Jake must eventually recognize that his daughter has developed an independent moral judgment. His apology to Johnny near the conclusion therefore represents more than correcting a factual mistake. He acknowledges that his own assumptions failed him. Penny Johnson's development is less dramatic because she begins as a more experienced adult, but her storyline gives the film much of its seriousness. Penny initially appears confident and highly skilled. Once her pregnancy is revealed, the audience sees how vulnerable her situation actually is. She lacks the financial and social protection available to the resort guests. Her friendship with Johnny is also important because it challenges the assumption that their close physical partnership must be romantic. The costume and set design of Dirty Dancing are essential to the film's ability to transport the audience to the summer of 1963. Although the movie was released in 1987, its visual world needed to represent an earlier America without turning the setting into an exaggerated collection of period references. The production achieves this through relatively restrained clothing, resort interiors, recreational spaces, furniture, vehicles, hairstyles, and carefully selected locations. These elements establish the period while also revealing differences in class, personality, age, and social expectations. Kellerman's is the most important piece of production design because nearly the entire story develops within its environment. The resort represents a protected vacation world for comfortable families. Its lawns, cabins, dining areas, performance rooms, staff quarters, recreational facilities, and surrounding landscape create the impression of a self-contained community where guests can spend an entire summer without needing to confront much of the outside world. The design reflects the organized nature of the resort. Guests are offered scheduled entertainment, games, dance lessons, meals, and evening performances. Public spaces are generally orderly and respectable. This visual organization supports the social hierarchy of Kellerman's. Everyone appears to have a designated place, just as everyone appears to have a designated social role. That order is contrasted with the staff areas Baby discovers. When she enters the employees' dance party, the atmosphere changes immediately. The space is more crowded, informal, physical, and sensual. The production design does not need to explain that Baby has crossed a social boundary. The difference in environment communicates it visually. The contrast is particularly important because Johnny exists in both worlds. During his professional duties, he must function as part of the entertainment offered to guests. Away from those duties, he belongs to the employees' more energetic social world. The spaces surrounding him therefore reflect the tension in his character. He is highly visible at Kellerman's, but never completely accepted as an equal by the wealthy people watching him. Baby's costumes follow her development with similar care. At the beginning, her clothing emphasizes youth, practicality, and innocence. She often wears relatively simple pieces that do not make her look like a sophisticated romantic heroine. Her appearance reinforces the idea that she has arrived at Kellerman's as a daughter on a family holiday rather than as someone searching for sexual adventure. Her wardrobe frequently includes shorts, simple tops, light blouses, trousers, cardigans, and casual summer clothing. The effect is approachable rather than glamorous. Jennifer Grey's natural appearance is important because Baby's transformation is not constructed as a dramatic makeover. She remains recognizably herself even as her confidence increases. As Baby becomes involved with Johnny and the dancers, her clothing allows greater freedom of movement. Dance rehearsals require garments that reveal the physical work taking place. The audience can see posture, leg movement, balance, and the changing confidence with which Baby occupies space. Costume, therefore, becomes directly connected to choreography. One of Baby's most memorable visual looks arrives during the final dance. Her pale dress is simple enough not to overpower the choreography, yet elegant enough to mark the importance of the moment. The flowing skirt responds to movement, giving turns and steps additional visual energy. The costume allows Baby to appear mature and romantic without transforming her into someone unrecognizable. Johnny's clothing communicates character in a different way. He is frequently associated with fitted shirts, dark trousers, dance clothing, and relatively simple working-class garments. His costumes emphasize his physicality because movement is central to his identity. Patrick Swayze's silhouette remains clearly visible, allowing the audience to understand Johnny's confidence before he even speaks. The dark clothing also distinguishes Johnny from Baby during several important sequences. Their visual contrast reinforces the differences between them: experience and innocence, employee and guest, outsider and protected daughter. As their relationship develops, however, choreography increasingly places those contrasting figures within the same visual rhythm. Penny's costumes communicate professional experience. Unlike Baby, she already understands how to present herself as a dancer. Her clothing and posture reveal discipline, confidence, and familiarity with performance. When Penny becomes physically vulnerable following the abortion, the contrast is therefore particularly effective. A character initially defined by control suddenly appears fragile. Lisa Houseman's wardrobe helps differentiate the sisters. Lisa is more interested in conventional romance, appearance, and the social possibilities of the vacation. Her clothing can consequently feel more decorative and traditionally feminine than Baby's practical early wardrobe. The contrast quickly establishes different personalities without requiring lengthy dialogue. Jake and Marjorie Houseman's costumes reinforce their position as respectable middle-class parents in the early 1960s. Their clothing is controlled and appropriate to the resort environment. Jake's appearance supports his authority as both a physician and a father, while Marjorie's wardrobe reflects the polished but relaxed expectations of an affluent family vacation. Costume also helps establish the broader social divisions at Kellerman's. The guests possess vacation clothing suited to leisure, while employees wear garments connected to work and performance. The young waiters who are encouraged to socialize with guests are presented differently from Johnny and the entertainment staff. Clothing, therefore, becomes another part of the resort's invisible hierarchy. The period hairstyles and makeup follow the same restrained approach. Rather than making every character look like an exaggerated symbol of 1963, the film uses recognizable period details while keeping the actors emotionally accessible to an audience watching in the 1980s. This was important because Dirty Dancing needed to feel nostalgic without creating so much historical distance that the romance became remote. The screenplay of Dirty Dancing is one of the main reasons the film works as more than a collection of romantic scenes and dance sequences. Written by Eleanor Bergstein, the script combines a coming-of-age story with romance, comedy, family conflict, class tension, and serious social issues. Its dialogue is generally direct rather than elaborate, but that simplicity allows the characters to sound emotionally immediate. Several lines became permanently associated with popular culture, while quieter conversations reveal how carefully the screenplay develops Baby's changing understanding of Johnny, her father, and herself. The script is largely structured through Baby's perspective. When a Houseman family arrives at Kellerman's, Baby understands the world according to the values she has learned from her parents. She expects people to behave responsibly and believes that moral distinctions should be relatively clear. The screenplay gradually places her in situations where those assumptions become difficult to maintain. Dialogue changes accordingly. Early conversations reveal innocence and dependence, while later ones show Baby challenging people she once accepted without question. One of the screenplay's strengths is its ability to establish character quickly. Baby's family dynamic is clear almost immediately. Jake Houseman is loving, intelligent, protective, and particularly close to Baby. Lisa is more interested in conventional romance and social activities. Marjorie observes the family with warmth and humor. Because these relationships are established efficiently, Later conflicts do not need lengthy explanations. Baby's entrance into the dancer's world produces one of the movie's most memorable comic lines. After carrying watermelons into the staff party and meeting Johnny, she awkwardly explains, "I carried a watermelon." The sentence is funny because it is exactly the kind of meaningless remark someone might make while nervous. It tells the audience more about Baby's state of mind than a polished piece of dialogue could. Humor is important because it prevents Baby's transformation from becoming too serious too quickly. During dance rehearsals, Johnny's frustration collides with Baby's awkwardness. Their exchanges frequently sound like arguments between a demanding instructor and an inexperienced student. Gradually, however, the tone changes. The same physical closeness that initially creates discomfort begins creating attraction. The screenplay understands that romance does not always need verbal declarations. Many of Johnny and Baby's most important developments occur between lines rather than through them. A correction during rehearsal, an uncomfortable pause, a look, or a moment of laughter can reveal their changing relationship. Dialogue supports the physical storytelling instead of constantly explaining it. Class differences are also expressed through language. Johnny understands that the wealthy guests possess power over him, and his conversations reveal a man accustomed to being judged. He can be confident while dancing, but defensive when discussing his position. Baby initially does not understand why he expects the worst from people in her social world. Their conversations gradually expose the distance between the life she has known and the one he experiences. Robbie Gould provides an important contrast. His education and social position allow him to sound respectable, yet his dialogue reveals selfishness. The screenplay deliberately separates polished appearance from moral character. Johnny may speak more roughly and react emotionally, but his actions toward Penny demonstrate loyalty. Robbie possesses the social credentials Jake might initially respect, but he refuses responsibility when Penny needs him. Penny's pregnancy introduces a much darker register. The screenplay does not treat the situation as a temporary misunderstanding designed merely to bring Baby and Johnny together. Penny's fear is connected to money, employment, and limited options. When the abortion goes badly, the consequences become physical and immediate. This gives the script dramatic weight beyond the central romance. Baby's conversations with her father are among the most important in the film because their relationship changes without losing its underlying affection. Jake begins as the person Baby trusts most. When he misunderstands Johnny's involvement with Penny, Baby knows something her father does not. This reversal forces her to decide whether she should remain obedient or defend what she knows to be true. The screenplay avoids making Jake a simple antagonist. His anger comes from concern for his daughter and from incomplete information. This makes their conflict more emotionally effective. Baby is not escaping an obviously cruel parent. She is learning that someone good and intelligent can still make a serious mistake. The confrontation between them after Johnny's dismissal demonstrates how far Baby has developed. She acknowledges that she lied and disappointed her father, but she refuses to accept that this makes his assumptions correct. The dialogue allows Baby to take responsibility while demanding the same moral honesty from Jake. Her maturity comes not from pretending she made no mistakes, but from understanding why she made them. Johnny also receives dialogue that exposes insecurity beneath his physical confidence. Baby initially sees him as someone completely comfortable with himself. Eventually, she realizes that Johnny has repeatedly been treated as though his value depends on entertaining wealthy people. His conversations with Baby reveal how deeply these judgments have affected him. This gives additional significance to the film's most famous line. When Johnny returns during the final show and declares, "Nobody puts Baby in a corner." The sentence is simple, almost theatrical, and completely suited to the heightened emotion of the climax. It works because the entire screenplay has prepared the idea behind it. Baby has metaphorically been placed in corners throughout the story. Her family believes it understands who she is. The resort hierarchy determines who should associate with whom. Johnny is expected to disappear after being dismissed. By bringing Baby into the center of the room, Johnny rejects those expectations publicly. The marketing of Dirty Dancing is a fascinating example of a film becoming far larger than anyone originally expected. When the movie was prepared for release in 1987, it was not positioned as an expensive Hollywood blockbuster supported by enormous advertising resources. It had been produced for a relatively modest budget and was distributed by Vestron Pictures, connected to a company best known for its success in the home video business. Instead of relying on spectacle or famous franchise characters, the campaign had to sell romance, dancing, music, and the chemistry between Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. The title itself was one of the film's most powerful marketing tools. Dirty Dancing was short, provocative, and immediately memorable. It suggested something forbidden and sensual without explaining exactly what the story involved. That created curiosity, particularly because the film itself was not simply an erotic dance movie. The title referred to the style of dancing that Baby discovers among the resort employees, but it also reflected the divide between respectable public behavior and the private world hidden behind Kellerman's carefully controlled appearance. Promotional artwork concentrated heavily on Baby and Johnny. One of the most familiar images shows Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze in an intimate dance position, with their bodies close and their attention focused on one another. This immediately communicated the central attraction of the film. Audiences did not need to understand Penny's pregnancy, the class divisions at Kellerman's, or Baby's conflict with her father before buying a ticket. The poster promised romance, physical chemistry, and dance. Patrick Swayze's physical presence became particularly valuable to the campaign. Johnny Castle could be marketed as a romantic fantasy while still appealing to audiences interested in dance and drama. Swayze looked convincing as a dancer because he actually possessed extensive dance training, meaning promotional photographs and footage could emphasize movement without disguising the performer's abilities. Jennifer Grey offered a different form of appeal. Baby was intentionally less polished than Johnny, allowing viewers to imagine themselves entering his world through her perspective. Marketing could therefore sell both fantasy and identification. Johnny represented the exciting figure waiting on the dance floor, while Baby represented the ordinary young woman who unexpectedly becomes his partner. Trailers and television advertising emphasized the film's most accessible ingredients. Dance sequences, romantic encounters, energetic music, and moments of conflict could communicate the experience quickly. The marketing did not need to explain every serious element of the story. Instead, viewers were invited to expect an emotional summer romance driven by music and physical attraction. Word of mouth soon became more powerful than conventional advertising. Audiences responded strongly to the chemistry between Grey and Swayze, and repeat viewing helped transform the movie from a successful release into a phenomenon. The final dance was particularly effective in generating enthusiasm because viewers left theaters with an emotionally uplifting climax still fresh in their minds. Music became perhaps the greatest promotional engine of all. The Dirty Dancing soundtrack allowed the film to exist outside cinemas and television advertisements. Radio stations could effectively promote the movie every time they played one of its songs. Record stores displayed the soundtrack. Music videos introduced performers connected with it, and listeners who enjoyed the songs could become interested in seeing the film. I've Had the Time of My Life became the most important example. Performed by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes, the song was inseparable from the climactic dance and became a major hit. Its success gave Dirty Dancing visibility across radio, record sales, award ceremonies, and popular entertainment. Winning the Academy Award for Best Original Song provided additional prestige and ensured that the movie remained part of the cultural conversation after its initial theatrical campaign. Hungry Eyes, performed by Eric Carmen, supplied another commercially successful romantic song. Patrick Swayze's recording of She's Like the Wind created an especially useful promotional connection because the movie's male star was also heard on its soundtrack. Swayze could therefore appear not only in film publicity, but within the movie's musical identity. The soundtrack's enormous sales demonstrated the value of cross-promotion between cinema and popular music. Audiences could watch Dirty Dancing, buy the album, hear its songs on the radio, and then be reminded of the film repeatedly. The soundtrack was not simply merchandise created after the movie succeeded. It became one of the central mechanisms through which the film expanded its audience. Home video created another major promotional advantage. Vestron's background in the video market became particularly significant as Dirty Dancing developed a life beyond theaters. VHS allowed fans to own the film and replay favorite sequences whenever they wanted. For a movie centered on music and choreography, repeated viewing was especially valuable. Fans could watch the final dance again, study the choreography, repeat favorite dialogue, and share the film with friends. This helped transform Dirty Dancing from a theatrical hit into a long-term entertainment product. Later releases on DVD, Blu-ray, digital platforms, and anniversary editions continued the same process. Each new format provided an opportunity to redesign packaging, promote restored versions, include additional material, and introduce the film to audiences who had not experienced it during its original run. Anniversaries became an important part of the film's continuing promotion. Rather than allowing Dirty Dancing to remain permanently associated with 1987, distributors and rights holders repeatedly returned attention to it through special screenings, commemorative releases, cast interviews, documentaries, and retrospective features. The film's famous scenes made these campaigns easy to recognize immediately. The brand also expanded into live entertainment. Dirty Dancing occupies an unusual place within the history of romantic and dance cinema because it combines several familiar genres without belonging completely to any one of them. It is a romance, a coming-of-age drama, a dance film, a period piece, and a story about class and family conflict. Comparing it with earlier dance movies, other romantic dramas, and later films influenced by similar ideas helps explain why Dirty Dancing developed such a distinctive identity and why attempts to reproduce its formula have rarely matched the original. One obvious comparison is Flashdance, released in 1983. Both films connect personal transformation with dance and became strongly associated with successful music. Flashdance follows Alex Owens, a young working-class woman who dreams of becoming a professional dancer. Dirty Dancing reverses part of that social structure. Baby comes from a comfortable family and enters the working-class world of Johnny and Penny. Dance is therefore not primarily Baby's professional ambition. It becomes the method through which she discovers another social reality. Flashdance also uses a highly stylized visual approach influenced by music videos. Dirty Dancing generally feels more intimate. Its rehearsals emphasize interaction between two bodies, and imperfections are important. Baby is allowed to look awkward, missteps, laugh, and fail. The goal is not simply to convince the audience that she can dance. The audience must understand how learning to dance changes her. Footloose, released in 1984, provides another useful comparison. In Footloose, dancing represents rebellion against institutional restriction. Young people challenge a community that has prohibited dancing. Dirty Dancing uses movement in a less literal but related way. Nobody has banned Baby from dancing, yet the type of dancing she discovers represents behavior outside the respectable world her family knows. Both films therefore associate dance with freedom, youth, and resistance to authority. However, Footloose makes the conflict public and communal, while Dirty Dancing initially makes it private. Baby's rebellion begins through secrets. Only during the finale does her dancing become a public declaration. Dirty Dancing can also be compared with Saturday Night Fever. That film uses dance to explore working-class frustration, masculinity, ambition, and escape. Johnny Castle shares something with characters whose greatest power exists on the dance floor. Johnny can dominate a room through movement, yet outside that space his social position remains insecure. The difference is tone. Saturday Night Fever is darker and more cynical, while Dirty Dancing ultimately embraces romantic optimism. Johnny's economic vulnerability is real, but the film allows its final performance to temporarily overcome the social divisions that have restricted him. West Side Story represents an earlier tradition in which dance is fully integrated with dramatic conflict. Its choreography expresses rivalry, love, identity, and violence. Dirty Dancing operates on a smaller scale, but it similarly treats movement as narrative language. Johnny and Baby's changing relationship can be understood through the way they dance together, even when dialogue is minimal. The film also belongs to the tradition of forbidden romances between people from different social worlds. In this respect, comparisons can be made with stories stretching back far beyond modern cinema. Baby's family expects a particular future for her, while Johnny appears to belong outside that future. Their attraction gains intensity because it crosses an established boundary. What makes Dirty Dancing distinctive is that the social difference is expressed physically. Johnny does not simply tell Baby that his world is different. He teaches her how to move within it. Every lesson requires her to surrender some of the stiffness and caution associated with her protected upbringing. The film can also be compared with later titles, such as Save the Last Dance. That movie similarly uses dance to connect characters from different social environments. Training, attraction, cultural difference, and performance become intertwined. Yet Save the Last Dance places greater emphasis on contemporary youth culture and personal ambition, while Dirty Dancing combines romance with the historical tensions of 1963. Step Up provides an even clearer example of the formula's later development. The 2006 film connects characters through dance despite differences in background and expectations. Like Johnny and Baby, its central couple learns through physical collaboration. Dance creates attraction while forcing each character to recognize qualities in the other that social assumptions might have concealed. The Step Up franchise, however, increasingly treats choreography as spectacle. Performances become larger, more technically elaborate, and more competitive. Dirty Dancing remains comparatively intimate. Its most famous dance matters because of what Baby and Johnny have experienced emotionally, not because it is the most complicated routine imaginable. This distinction explains why the final lift is so effective. Technically impressive dance can entertain without requiring a story. In Dirty Dancing, the audience has already watched Baby fail to complete the lift. When she finally succeeds, choreography becomes character development. Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights offers the most direct comparison because it deliberately revisits the original concept. Released in 2004 and set in Cuba in 1958, it follows another young woman who discovers romance and personal freedom through dance. The historical environment is different, and political instability plays a larger role in the background. Patrick Swayze's appearance as a dance instructor creates an intentional connection with the original, but Havana Nights demonstrates how difficult the original chemistry was to reproduce. Dirty Dancing was not successful merely because it contained attractive performers, forbidden romance, and sensual choreography. Jennifer Grey and Swayze created a specific mixture of tension, awkwardness, humor, and desire. The 2017 television adaptation provides another revealing comparison. It retells the familiar Baby and Johnny story with new performers and expands certain narrative elements. Yet recreating famous scenes automatically invites comparison with images audiences have known for decades. The lift, the dialogue, the soundtrack, and Johnny's entrance during the finale carry cultural expectations that did not exist when the original was produced.